At the company town hall, the CEO said, "We promoted from within someone who represents our values." Everyone clapped until they saw it was my former assistant who used to say, "Can you type this for me? It's too boring." He winked at me like he'd won. But then I pulled up the slide deck he'd just stolen from my personal drive and said loudly, "I've worked at this company for 9 years. I started out on the lowest rung, customer support, quiet cubicle, cheap headset, barely any recognition. But I was good. I worked harder than most people in my department, stayed late, helped train new hires, got moved up to operations after 2 years. By year 4, I was leading strategy on my team. No one gave me the title, but they always came to me for answers. Around year 6, my manager told me I needed help with admin stuff. That's when we hired Kyle. Kyle was fresh out of college. He didn't even pretend to care about the job. From day one, he'd say things like, "You're better at this stuff. Can you type this up for me?" Or, "Decks are so boring. You're good with slides, right?" I pushed back at first, but it was subtle. I didn't want to seem uncooperative. And honestly, I thought, fine, I'll do it better anyway. Over time, I noticed something. Kyle always made sure he was in the room when I presented things, even if he had nothing to do with the project. He'd repeat points I had made in prep meetings. Sometimes he'd say them like they were his ideas. I let it slide. Again and again. My mistake. He was charming in that fake, shiny way. Always quick with a joke, always complimenting higher-ups. People liked him, or they thought they did. One director used to say, "Kyle's got presence." Meanwhile, I was still the one staying late, updating forecasts, testing rollouts, building entire playbooks from scratch. But Kyle was slowly being brought into more senior conversations. It hit me one afternoon when a VP asked if I could support Kyle with the next product expansion deck. Support him. I had written the last 2 decks. Kyle had copied and pasted a few charts, added some emojis, and presented it like it was his vision. I started saving everything: file versions, timestamps, screen recordings. I knew something was coming, but I didn't know what. Then came the email: company-wide town hall, new leadership announcement. We all piled into the big meeting room. Marketing had coffee and snacks. It felt like a pep rally. The CEO stepped up, all smiles. He gave this big speech about promoting from within and recognizing someone who really reflects our company values. People started clapping before they even said a name, and then they said it, "Kyle." I swear the room went still for half a second. Then the clapping continued, slower this time. Kyle walked up like he was already a star. He winked at me. That smug, slimy kind of wink, like he thought he'd beat me. He gave a short thank you speech, said something about collaborative teamwork and big picture thinking. I just sat there. Then he pulled up a slide deck on the giant screen, and my stomach dropped. It was my deck, the whole thing. He hadn't even changed the name of the file, just moved it into his folder. Slide by slide, chart by chart, my layout, my strategy, my words. He stood there walking the team through it like he'd created it. I didn't even stand up. I just connected my laptop to the internal system. I'd been part of the event prep team, so I still had access. I pulled up the file history with timestamps, backups, source locations. Then I dragged it to the screen split. 2 windows, Kyle's deck, and the original file pulled from my personal drive, with my name watermarked on every page. People gasped. Kyle froze mid-sentence. And then I said, calmly, loud enough for the back row to hear, "This was taken from my private drive 3 days ago. I didn't share it with anyone." That's when everything started unraveling. But I'll get to that. At first, no one said anything. Kyle just stood there, hands still gripping the clicker, not moving. I could see his throat tighten as he tried to swallow. The CEO looked confused, almost like he didn't understand what he was seeing. A few people in the room turned their heads toward me. Some looked away. I repeated it. I said the file came from my personal drive. I said I hadn't shared it. I even opened the internal system logs that showed when Kyle accessed my folder. He'd done it at 11:43 p.m. 3 nights ago. I showed the screen. My voice was steady, but I could feel my hands shaking under the table. Kyle finally spoke. He mumbled something about collaboration, how we'd worked on ideas together. But it was a lie. Everyone knew it. I could feel the shift in the room. People didn't clap anymore. They didn't smile. They just stared. Someone from the product team leaned over and whispered to someone else. One of the analysts looked straight down at his lap. The CEO asked to speak to me privately. Kyle followed. We walked into a smaller conference room off to the side. HR showed up too. The CEO tried to keep his tone even, but you could tell he was rattled. He asked me to explain everything. I did. I showed them emails, old decks, Slack messages. I opened version history of every document Kyle had ever touched that originated from my work. HR just nodded and typed. Kyle kept insisting it was a misunderstanding, that I had been supporting him, and that maybe the lines got blurred. He even tried to laugh a little, like this was some miscommunication between friends. I said, clearly, I had never once shared that file, and that he had taken it and presented it as his own at a company-wide leadership reveal. That meeting lasted almost an hour. When I came out, the town hall was over. People were leaving. Some wouldn't look at me. A few gave me small nods. One of the interns mouthed, "Are you okay?" But that was just the beginning. The next day, Kyle didn't show up to work. His calendar was suddenly blocked out. HR didn't make any announcement. I was asked not to speak about what happened with anyone in the company while they conducted a review. That's what they always say. Then I started getting strange signals. A couple of coworkers stopped replying to my messages. One manager, who had always supported me, suddenly said he was too busy to review a deck I'd been working on. I overheard someone say I embarrassed Kyle in public, like that was the real issue. Not the theft, not the lie, but the fact that I exposed it. And then it got worse. One morning, I opened my laptop and couldn't log in. My credentials had been disabled. I thought maybe it was a mistake. I used my phone to email IT. No reply. A few hours later, I got a message from HR, short and cold. I was being placed on leave pending further review of conduct. No explanation. No warning. I called the HR contact. She wouldn't speak to me directly. I emailed the CEO. Nothing. That night, I got a DM from a coworker I trusted. She said there were rumors that I had hacked Kyle's account or accessed his files without permission. Lies. All of it. But they were trying to flip the story. Kyle was still gone, but the company wasn't protecting me. If anything, they were trying to clean up the mess fast, and I was being framed. I went quiet. I started collecting everything. Every file. Every timestamp. Every screenshot. I backed it all up to an external drive. And I waited. Because I wasn't going to let it end like this. About a week into my forced leave, I got a letter. Not email. A physical envelope hand-delivered. It was from the company's legal team. Inside were 3 pages. A formal notice accusing me of violating internal confidentiality policies, accessing another employee's files, and disrupting a company event. They were investigating possible termination. No mention of Kyle. No mention of the stolen deck. Nothing about the proof I'd shown in front of the entire company. I sat there staring at the letter. I felt sick, like everything I'd worked for, nearly a decade of late nights and work weekends, meant nothing. I hired a lawyer, not a cheap one, but I'd saved enough over the years, and I wasn't going to go down quietly. She told me to stay quiet, gather everything, and document every single interaction. She also advised me to request copies of internal access logs and audit trails under my employee rights. That's when something strange happened. While going through my old files, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A PDF. It had been auto-saved into one of my shared folders by mistake. It was a scan of Kyle's handwritten notes, with my project outline written out in his handwriting, dated 2 months before the presentation. But the weird part was the signature at the bottom. It wasn't Kyle's. It was from Eric, one of the senior directors. Someone close to the CEO. Someone who had always pushed Kyle's name forward. I dug deeper. My lawyer suggested we file a formal discovery request. It took time, but when we finally got some of the metadata from internal files, it confirmed something big. Kyle hadn't accessed my deck directly. Eric had. Kyle's name wasn't in the access log. Eric's was. At 11:43 p.m., the night the file was copied, Eric had logged into the system from a remote IP and pulled my personal folder into a new file directory under Kyle's name. My heart sank. It hadn't just been Kyle. This went higher. Kyle was a puppet. I remembered a meeting from months ago. Eric had asked me to walk him through my ideas for our expansion playbook. He said he wanted to get a sense of my strategic thinking. I had shown him everything, naively. I thought he was mentoring me. He wasn't. They used me. Eric had access to executive folders. He could manipulate logs. If I had exposed Kyle and the company removed him, they'd still have Eric, still pulling strings, still pushing his favorite forward. And now they were trying to erase me completely. But they made one mistake. When they accused me of hacking Kyle's files, they had no idea the system would eventually show it wasn't Kyle who took them. It was their own director. My lawyer said it clearly. This could go beyond HR. This could go public. This could go legal. Still, I didn't move right away. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to finish it, not just clear my name. Because I wasn't interested in surviving this anymore. I was going to burn the whole thing down. I waited 6 more days. Quiet. Watching. Every single morning I woke up sick. But I kept going. My lawyer and I built a timeline, a binder full of screenshots, file paths, metadata logs, internal emails, meeting invites, chat messages, everything. We labeled each one. Then I sent one email. Subject: formal legal notice, documented IP theft, retaliation, defamation to the CEO, head of HR, legal, and CC'd my lawyer. In the body, I listed facts. I didn't yell. I didn't explain how it felt. I just gave them the dates, names, screenshots, and legal consequences of what they did. I ended it with one line. If I don't receive written acknowledgement within 72 hours, I will escalate to the board, state regulators, and media. I didn't sleep that night. By the next morning, the CEO replied. He wanted a private call. Just the two of us. I said no. My lawyer said no. Everything from that point forward had to go through counsel. Then the company flipped. Suddenly, I was reinstated. Quietly. Access restored. But I didn't log in. I didn't say a word to anyone. 3 days later, Kyle's name disappeared from the company org chart. No goodbye email. No announcement. Another 4 days and Eric was moved into an advisory role. That's what they called it. I knew what it meant. He was being cleaned out quietly. Their way of pretending it was planned, but it wasn't. I heard through one of the assistants that he cleared his desk at 7 p.m. with no one around. No handshakes. Just gone. But that wasn't enough. They tried to offer me a promotion, a raise, a new title. I said no. I didn't want their gift. Instead, I went further. With my lawyer, I filed a formal complaint to the board. Attached were all the documents. I also wrote a full, factual report and sent it to a reporter I trusted anonymously. 2 weeks later, an article dropped. Company accused of silencing whistleblower over stolen work. It exploded. Thousands of shares. The comments were brutal. People started naming names. Former employees started chiming in. A quiet storm turned into a flood. 2 board members stepped down. The CEO released a public statement saying they were reviewing internal procedures. By then, I'd already given notice. I didn't want revenge that kept me tied to them. I wanted freedom. But before I left, I did one last thing. I sent Kyle a message. Just one sentence. You never won. You were just used and then erased. He never replied. I didn't expect him to. As for Eric, he faded. Word got out in the industry. People stopped taking his calls. Last I heard, he was consulting out of a co-working space downtown. No one big. No more teams. And me? I left. Took time off. Then I joined a startup led by someone I actually respected. I started over. Slower. Smarter. I kept my decks locked tight, but I also stopped apologizing for being the one who actually did the work. I used to think I lost everything when I stood up in that town hall, but I didn't. I just lit a match, and I watched them burn.